Hello everyone. This is a presentation and the topic would be the ethical analysis of UBI. This is done for PHI447 course and it is done by group 3. These are the members of our group. So introduction. What is UBI? So we define universal basic income as an economic program defined by the governing body to provide every single member of society with an optimal sum of money on an unconditional basis. This is to be done preferably every month and it is done to everyone in the society irrespective of their economic status, that is whether they're rich or poor, and their employment status, that is whether they're employed or they're looking for a job or they're unemployed. And it doesn't discriminate based on any other social status, only if you are a citizen or not. Such a program is designed to ensure greater productivity among the recipients and alleviate wealth inequality in the society. It also improves the standards of living on a baseline level. It is proposed as a very cost efficient means to replace other bloated and big budget welfare systems, and this compares to such welfare systems in a better way. That is, it allows the recipients to have more choices and autonomy in investing their money rather than being restrictive by the government that provides them the money. Financial analysis. So in this presentation, we'll be looking more towards the ethical analysis. And so we'll just look at the financial consensus on UBI and see that it is indeed a positive effect on economy. The general economic consensus is that UBI is indeed financially viable in developed nations. Starting such programs locally and scaling it up is indeed possible. So UBI trials have been conducted in places such as California, Germany, and Ontario, and economists claim that the main question on UBI is only the political feasibility and that it is indeed economically feasible. So, economics has suggested a few ways to make UBI sustainable. So, you could either cut expenses on other welfare programs and just provide UBI alone. You could just tax the value added by automation, that is, the value added to the products by machinery at a higher rate than normal taxation, or you could offer UBI as negative income tax. So this would prevent a main question which we will see in the future, that UBI disincentivizes work. In any case, the consensus is that a UBI scheme is financially feasible over time with extensive planning and proper implementation. So, as Professor Mark Stiller remarks, we have wealth on a scale unknown to previous generations, and it's time we use it equitably. So, this Professor Frank Stiller he explains this in an article while explaining why UBI is viable in today's.
Hello everyone, myself I'm Sujith. Let us talk about hedonistic analysis of universal basic income. Let us first talk about Epicurus and his lifestyle. Epicurus is one of the famous hedonist philosophers. Epicurus did not think people should live by the frenetic pursuit of wine, women, and song, but by seeking health of body and sanity of soul. The point of view of Epicurus' version of hedonism, the UBA seems strong because if government can provide income for basic shelter, food, and clothes, then people can at least live Epicurus lifestyle. And also, we can say government had done the best they can do to promote this type of lifestyle if they implement UBI. What if Epicurean idea become too popular? The more it becomes popular, the less people will be willing to work hard, provide the resources that society needs to keep the UBI scheme going. Thus, it would be best if only some portion of the population pursue a hedonistic lifestyle, while the rest of the population continue to work hard. Let us also talk about John Stuart Mill. Although Mill was a hedonist, it was not exactly a hedonism of Benthamite. He distinguished between higher and lower pleasures. But other dimension of Mill's thought seems to be important. Mill was wary about the informal power, the tyranny of the prevailing opinion and feeling, the tendency of the society to impose its own ideas and practices as rules of conduct on those who dissent from them. To combat this conformism, Mill thought that not only it is desired that there should be different opinions in society, but also to practice different experimental ways of living. UA should enable all people to live by their own social rules and experiment with their ways of living. And if one agrees with Mill about the importance of individuality for well-being, then the case of this policy becomes to be strong. Does the immigration concerns hedonists? Well, hedonists have no national boundaries while maximizing pleasure. So if more and more people come to the doorstep, will hedonists keep welcoming them to take wealth from your country? So at which point should hedonists should limit themselves? Must a rich country, in other words, receive immigrants to the point where so many receive no other income than the basic income that the scheme is no longer affordable? Although some hedonists will answer yes to these questions, I believe that the answer is not self evident. It is possible to claim that the hedonist duty to help stop well before the equilibrium point as above. UBI may keep some isolated individuals in a passive state, and passive pleasures such as watching television by yourselves, those are usually perceived as less pleasure than active social pleasures.
Ethical egoism. So now we'll look at how ethical an ethical egoist would analyze universal basic income. Ethical egoism proposes that agents should act only in accordance to their self-interest. I mean, there are more extreme forms of ethical egoism where a person claims that everyone in society should act according to his self-interest, but we'll not be concerning ourselves with that. We'll, according to this ethical egoism, that agents should act only in accordance to their self-interest. So, according to this philosophy, introducing UBI could be right to certain people and wrong to certain other people. This is because of differential tax rates between the rich and the poor. Since taxes would fund the UBI program, some people may gain a net benefit by gaining UBI and spending lesser in taxes, while it can result in a net deficit for the rich. Like they need to pay more in taxes, but they gain only the nominal amount of UBI a month. So, however, it can be argued that losing money for the overall alleviation of poverty and enhanced productivity of the society is a good trade off even for these rich people. This is because extensive research has been conducted to show that poverty and crime are extremely correlated. That is, when poverty in society reduces, the crime drastically decreases. And also, it leads to better quality of services in the society because by giving a nominal sum to everyone in society, you effectively give them a safety net and they do what they want to do. They venture into jobs which they feel more productive in, they venture into jobs which they like. As a result, the quality of services in society just can only grow. So, because of this growth, even the rich people get benefited due to these decreasing crime rates and the quality of services. So, some can you can even argue that for those rich people who lose money, the net trade-off is indeed a positive, and therefore, egoistically too, they should be in support of UBI. Moreover, even if we say that when seen through egoism, UBI is bad for some other people, the number of people having this net deficit is found to be very low compared to the very high number of people in poverty. We know that the world's rich 1% are likely to have more money than 6.9 billion of normal people with an average source of income. So, because of this difference in earnings, it is indeed egoistically also arguable that UBI is indeed a moral right which should be available to everyone. Altruistic analysis of UBA. So, altruism is basically the exact opposite of egoism. According to altruism, an agent should not care about his self interest at all. Like whether it is positive to him or negative to him doesn't matter. It only matters what happens to the self interest of the other people around him. So he should always work such that the people around him are benefited. So, given that UBA can alleviate poverty to a major level and provide people whose jobs have been replaced by machinery and artificial intelligence with a decent standard of living, it only follows that an altruistic person would give away all his excesses for such a scheme. In fact, in an altruistic society, the contribution to UBI would not be uniform. People would give and get money dependent on their economic status and employment status. The funds would be collected in a more unequal manner and it would also be spent in a more unequal manner. So that would be in an altruistic society.
So now we are going to do analysis of UBI via Kantian deontology. Kant's moral philosophy does not examine consequences to determine an action's ethical value, but rather places significance on compliance with duties. So obligations in Kantian morals are explained as oughts, where we have to consider them as commands without any exception. Kant has provided several formulations to analyze whether some action is morally correct or not. First formulation is that we only have to run a thought experiment where we assume that action to be morally correct and check if it does not contradict with any other moral values. The second formulation is that every human being, irrespective of what they have done in their life or what they are about to do, must be treated as ends in themselves and should not be used for mere means. Thus, we are not permitted to violate another person's dignity. Considering the Kant's formulation, we come to a conclusion and we have the following analysis for universal basic income. First, we must treat others well and respect their dignity. And letting people go poor actually violates their human dignity. And considering that UBI is the best way to abolish poverty, eliminate fear and suffering, we are ought to have UBI. We can also check that UBI does not violate any other moral value, and thus having UBI is must.
Hello everyone. Now let us look at the ethical analysis of UBI via utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a normative ethical theory that follows the principle of utility, which states that the moral end to be sought in all that we do is to achieve the greatest possible balance of good over evil, that is, achieving the greatest possible good for the greatest possible number. Bentham and Mill adopt a hedonistic approach in which the good in itself is happiness. Happiness is intrinsically valuable and it ought to be within every person's interest to maximize happiness. Utilitarianism suggests that actions are right if they foster happiness among many, even if those actions can cause suffering for a few. The harm it does to a smaller number of people in achieving the maximum utility is justified as long as what is gained compensates for what is lost, which is similar to consequentialism, where the unethical value of an action is judged by the consequences it produces. Modern utilitarianism suggests that an action is right if maximum number of people can have their preferences satisfied. The utilitarianism analysis of UBI is as follows. The goal of an utilitarian is to achieve maximum utility. A UBI would maximize utility by providing people with basic living conditions, thereby presenting them with more choices. Therefore, we should implement UBI. Utility in here refers to the greatest possible balance of good over evil. Here, good and evil are non-moral good and non-moral evil. A non-moral good can be understood as happiness, and evil can be understood as pain.
Now we'll discuss about popular objections to UBI. The first one is social stigma, and second is bureaucracy. The social stigma argument is very easy to refute. The reason for this is that the argument is as follows. The social stigma argument says that potential recipients are very less likely to accept UBI due to the stigma around welfare and because they feel shameful in accepting free money. But when we look at the core of UBI, we understand that everyone, irrespective of their social status, they would be provided basic income, and thus it will prevent stigma of any kind since everyone is treated the same. Now, moving on to bureaucratic argument. This argument is very much likely to applicable. We would require more governmental structures that may or may not be transparent in implementing the UBI model. And this is the trade-off that we will have to bear with. But on the other hand, if we were about to talk in favor of UBI, we can say that every welfare program is anyways doomed to be disbursed through bureaucracy. And UBI at least removes complex machinery within the bureaucracy by being universal to all.
A very popular objection to UBI is the meritocracy argument. It argues that basically UBI discriminates against people who work hard. This is because UBI is partially more beneficial to people who earn less and therefore pay less in taxes. UBI sets it up such that people who actually work harder are worse off than the others. This argument is kind of naive and can be easily refuted. It is obvious that notions of pure meritocracy are never grounded in the reality of socioeconomic inequality in the world. The material conditions of members of a society are never in a meritorious state. It is defined by mere luck and chance and by the dynamics of cumulative inequality. By mere luck and chance, we mean that a person has no say in which family he is born into. It could be a rich family or a poor family. And also, it is defined by the dynamics of cumulative inequality. That is, a poor family which has been poor throughout the ages can continue to be poorer and poorer, whereas the rich steamroll over them. So, this argument is not rooted in reality at all. Proclaiming that meritocracy is what we ought to fight for is a reasonable claim, but already presupposing the argument in such a way that the world is indeed a meritocracy already is a totally naive thing to do. Necessity of UBI. A conclusive summary. With the recent exponential growth of automation replacing human labor, UBI provides these people a baseline to potentially transition into a new job, learn a skill, innovate, or create a new job, venture into new businesses, or make a wise investment. So, with the growing ages of automation, So these people need new jobs. So they either need to create a new job, or they need to go into a new business, or they need to learn a new skill. So UBI facilitates this by being a safety net for them. UBI provides autonomy to the people, it gives them wiggle room to do what they are interested in and makes them more productive. Therefore, it results in a more productive and more competent society. And as we saw before, it leads to the quality of services in the society becoming very high. UBI also provides more liberty than other welfare options. This is very obvious because other welfare options are kind of dictated by the government. But when you give a person some money in cash, it gives him more liberty to do whatever he wants. The world's richest 1% are reported to have more than twice as much wealth as 6.9 billion average people. This is a stat which we also mentioned before, and UBI can play a major role in the betterment of this obviously ridiculous and unjust state of the society. So UBI as a policy in today's society. UBI has been gaining in popularity recently, especially with the increase in automation of jobs. It has even gained the attention of various academics and tech visionaries such as Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and various politicians across the political divide. Like when Andrew Yang ran on the Democratic primary in the US presidential elections of 2020, this was one of his major talking points, and it actually increased the social acceptance of UBI to an unprecedented level. Having argued how UBI is morally right now means that we have to work as a society to making it socially acceptable and educating people about the goods and bads of UBI and making it established as by default in every nation of the country. Thank you very much.